From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Good morning, security gang. Welcome to another episode of the CyberHub Podcast. Thank you all for being here today. I'm feeling a bit better. For those who don't know, I'm recovering from pneumonia. And so yesterday I was actually sitting down. Today I feel a little, see how long I can sit down. This is a standing desk so I can rise it. I may have to do a small commercial break in the middle and give myself a seat if I run out of breath here. But nonetheless, thank you all for tuning in. A packed show for all y'all today. We're going to get right into it. Join me for a coffee cup cheers to kick off the show. My double espresso. I'm going to drink probably a sip of it, and then the rest will probably go down the drain, unfortunately. But coffee cup cheers, y'all. Yeah, apparently caffeine just not good for your lungs. All right. Here's the thing about Apple. So Apple has always talked about how, because of the way they manage their OS, it's relatively more secure than all other functioning OSs. And for a period of time, that kind of stigma was around, and it kind of made Apple users feel superior. Now, I'm a big Apple user, so there's that. But now we're really, over the last several years, we've really started to identify that kind of stigma around Apple OS is slowly coming down, because nation states understand that kind of superiority that Apple users have. They also understand the marketing that Apple does and the people who use Apple devices and want to be able to achieve access to those devices. And that's where we saw, the different spyware vendors come through and really just focus on breaking down that stigma and that barrier. And since then, Apple has really been pushing their updates. And I say all of that because I don't think what I'm saying today is and this first story we're talking about is going to be anything other than very similar to Patch Tuesday going forward with Apple devices. So Apple, for its end, on Monday, announced fresh security updates for both iOS and macOS. They're addressed over 70 different CVEs across their platforms, including several bugs that leading to protected file system modification. The iOS 18.1 and iPad 18.1 are now rolling out to mobile users. They patched 28 different vulnerabilities that could lead to information leaks, the disclosure of process memory, denial of service, sandbox escapes, modification of protected system files, heap corruption, and access to restricted files. According to Apple, the flaws were resolved with improper authentication checks, logic input validation, handling of content, memory management, private data redaction, state management, and file and memory handling. Also, Sequoia 15.1 addressed 59 different security defects, and those were resolved now as well. Those patches address 15 issues that were addressed with several third-party dependencies. They include app support, Cortex, Foundation, Image.io, installer kernel, ProRes, Safari download, Safari private browsing, SceneKit, Shortcut, Siri, and WebKit. The macOS 15.1 update comes roughly 3 weeks after Apple released a Sequoia update to resolve compatibility issues with different security tools that existed there. And then obviously other ones there too. To answer the question for Ernesto, Starbucks or neither? Okay, so I like Dutch Brothers, but not for their espresso, like for their actual mixed drinks. I don't like Starbucks. I used to like Starbucks when I was in high school. I was at a barista at Starbucks, like inside of an Albertsons. And, I used to like sugary coffee drinks, but I just now have matured, I've traveled, I've found my taste of coffee as part of my maturity, not dissing anyone who drinks Starbucks, obviously. And I enjoy my coffee with a double espresso, Ernesto. So great question. Another cup of coffee while we go to the next story. The Dutch National Police are announcing on Monday they've gained full access to all servers that were used by two of the most popular Infostealers on the web, Redline and Meta. Infostealers are a major cyber threat. They're often sold as part of a malware as a service tool. They infect victim devices to harvest information like credit card detail and autofill password data. That's why you got to have a password manager, right? The Infostealers, when you save passwords into your browser, and I know most of you are cybersecurity crowd, um, and that's, you know this, but for those that aren't, just because the browser makes it easy, it's if it's easy for you to use it, it's easy for the criminal to abuse it. Just leave that there. Um, and kind of let that be there. If it's easy for you to use it, it's easy for the criminal to abuse it. And just remember that. Let that be kind of something that goes with you forever, right? Criminals use this malware, then bundle the information into logs that are sold on credential marketplaces to fraudsters, as well as initial access brokers that are attempting to infiltrate organizations with login details in order to really launch malware attacks. On Monday, the Dutch National Police, alongside the FBI and other partner agencies from the US, Australia, and the UK, announced the disrupting of these two Infostealers on a website for Operation Magnus, which has a timer promising more news, counting down to noon on Tuesday, Dutch local time. That was a few hours ago. I didn't see anything. A video on the site mimicking the criminal's own advertisement says police have provided a final update for both the Redline and Meta Infostealer strains, explaining that the international operation gained full access to all Redline and Meta servers. So we'll see how long that takedown actually lasts. And I'll say how long it actually lasts because I'll say the following. Every time we announce a major takedown, every time they come back because the decentralized nature of it. All right. Don't want to get stuck there. Free, which is a major ISP in France, confirmed over the weekend that attackers were able to breach its systems and stole customer information. The company says it had over 22.9 million mobile users, mobile and fixed subscribers by the end of June. It's the second largest telecom company in France and a subsidiary of the, I believe that's the Iliad Group, Europe's sixth largest mobile operator by number of subscribers. Free has filed a criminal complaint with the public prosecutor. They've notified the French National Commission for Information Technology and Civil Liberties and the National Agency for Security of Information Systems of the incident. Just understand, like, that to me is they've got to file a criminal complaint with the public prosecutor. They've got to notify these commissions and all of these different agencies that do what? I don't know what purpose they have other than bureaucracy. The affected subscribers have been or will be informed by email shortly, according to a spokesperson for the company. Free added that the attack targeted a management tool that exposed subscriber data. However, attackers failed to access customer passwords, bank card information, or communication content. The data stolen in the attack is now being auctioned on breach forums to the highest bidder, with the threat actor known as Drosselex claiming that the breach impacted almost a third of France's population. Apparently, if you take a look at kind of the type of data you see on here, by the way, you're seeing that the login, and so this seems to be, either API data or something along those lines. But we don't know yet how this breach took place. Be interesting, but it'd be interesting because ISPs are now in the news, right? So we know in the US, major ISP, we talked about it yesterday on the show, where China was accused or is being accused, and an investigation is ongoing as to whether or not the ISP breach into the wiretap system also compromised the phone devices of President Trump and Senator JD Vance, as well as people working for Vice President Kamala Harris's campaign. So all in all, you have to understand the significance there, and it's just a list, and this tower just keeps collapsing one by one, right? Just one by one, because we're just, oh, it's happening to those guys, it won't happen to me. But it is, and it's happening, and these nation states are increasing their activity. This is likely not just some simple breach, but it likely has some nation state motive behind it. Don't be surprised there. In Italy, 4 people were arrested on Friday, dozens of more are under investigation in what is an alleged conspiracy that's linking current and former officials in the country's security services to a private intelligence agencies for the purposes of building illegal dossier. Now, you say, why does this matter? Because what politicians call illegal dossier, we call threat intelligence in our terms, right? So you kind of have to play dictionary sometimes. And as a CISO, you do that in business, right? Cyber terms, development terms, app terms, and then you want to relate to the executive team. So you're translating all of that to business terms, and then to the board risk terms and governance terms, etc. So we're always playing translation. But when I see dossier and I see them say dossier, I translate that to threat intelligence, simply because what they're saying here is that there's a private company. Now, whether this is illegal dossier, how they're obtaining the information could be illegal, all of which, again, there's more to the story than what I'm just highlighting here, right? So this is a scandal in Italy because what a lot of people believe is that's how they're blackmailing politicians. So, one would argue we have something very similar going on in this country. I won't say who, but can't stop, won't stop. All right. Italy's defense minister Guido Cresto called for the country's parliament to intervene, expressing concern that the practice could be widespread, with Friday's arrest just being the tip of the iceberg. The Italian prosecutors say the conspiracy has high level of support in various environments, including that of the mafia and the secret services, and even foreign ones. At the center of the arrest is a business intelligence company called Equalize that's led by a former super cop by the name of Carmine Gallo. Now, tell me that's not a name from The Sopranos. Tell me that's Carmine Gallo. Tell me that's not a name from The Sopranos. He's accused of hacking sensitive government and police databases to create dossiers, and that's where that line is met, right? So threat intelligence, we're scanning the open web. We're doing a bunch of OSINT. We're looking at a bunch of different data. We're bringing that data together in order to make decisions. Here, however, in this dossier creation, they're actually accused of hacking government information and police databases to create these dossiers. Gallo is among one of the four arrested, and he was arrested along others who run companies that specialize in cybersecurity. And folks, that's where the line is, right then and there. Today's story is around the thin line of cybersecurity, right? That line of white and black, that gray line that we often kind of play with, right? I did a SANS training in September, right? And I was in a SANS training, and we did a lock picking class, right? And if you're a pen tester, you got a lock picking workshop, because part of what you do in physical stuff is pick locks. That's part of a pen test. When you're doing a fully functional pen test, that's part of it. Can I get into the building? Can I pick your lock? How secure is your lock? Fair enough. Well, that's significant, by the way, there. So the hack databases included strategic intelligence held by the police, by Italy's revenue agency, and Banca Italia, as reported by Rai News. The data was allegedly sold to Equalize customers or used to blackmail businessmen and politicians in a practice that prosecutors said went back to at least 2019 and continued up until March of this year. Investigators led by the anti-mafia prosecutors Francisco de Tomasai warned that Equalize boasted to its client being able to intervene in investigations and trials, and of having used contacts in the police and other public services to illegally obtain data. So shady practices altogether there. If you're a ChatGPT user, like many of us are, or you're looking at large language models, there's a few jailbreak options here that have actually taken place with breaking the simple breaking guardrails to get ChatGPT to actually do malicious items. So one of those was all AI chatbots are trained not to provide information that could be potentially hateful or harmful. But however, a jailbreak that Figueroa detailed in a blog post published on Monday on the Zero Din website targeted ChatGPT 4.0 and involves encoding malicious instruction in a hexadecimal format. The method was demonstrated by getting ChatGPT to generate an exploit written in Python for a vulnerability with a specified CVE identifier. If the user instructs the chatbot to write an exploit for a specified CVE, they're informed the request violates usage policies. However, when the request was encoded in hexadecimal format, the guardrails that were in place were bypassed, and ChatGPT not only wrote the exploit, but also attempted to execute it against itself. For all of you wondering when AI will replace humans, there you go. Guardrails. Humans have guardrails naturally. Machines don't yet. Will they get better at it? Yes, but you can't replace the human element. Can't do it. Doesn't exist. All right. That's that. All right. JamesHazard.substack.com. Let's roll through here. We're really running out of time. The U.S. government issued new guidance governing the use of traffic light protocol. That's the TLP of how to handle intelligence, threat intelligence information sharing between the private sector, individual researchers, and federal department and agencies. They've really updated. It's typically red, amber, green, and white, but now they've added amber strict. So that's kind of the add to it. You can see this in our show notes and on our Substack. Canada, for their end, are saying they're also experiencing a whole bunch of scanning coming from a Chinese threat actor. They're saying they're not seeing any breaches, but it's been targeting their democratic institutions, critical infrastructure, defense entities, media, NGOs, think tanks, as well as their House of Commons, Senate, political parties, government agencies. So pretty much everyone's getting scanned by the People's Republic of China. And they're just letting everyone know that we're aware of the scanning. They're not seeing any active attacks. But if you're wondering why China does that, it's because over the last decade, China understands investing in youth. They've created essentially a youth pipeline for capture the flag tournaments. And that's how they're attracting cyber savvy citizens into security and then into the government jobs for cyber. Those efforts are paying off. Today, the nation has more than 50 annual competitions as part of training tens of thousands and possibly hundreds of thousands of cybersecurity specialists. They're creating a stronger connection to government and industry. According to a research report published by the Atlantic Council on October 18th, sector-specific contests that target mobile autonomous vehicles and smart cities help deepen technical expertise of participants and address the specific needs for each industry. Investing in education, so critical. China's doing it. We're lagging as a country. The Western civilization is lagging in here. We have to be honest with ourselves. We're not teaching our kids the important things in school anymore. That's why I send mine to private, and it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart. And finally, the SEC sending a message to startups about the fake it culture, saying, hey, trying to say fake it till you make it is actually misleading and defrauding investors, and we're going to come after you. This is coming obviously after FTX and a whole bunch of other stories there, but I'll have this story linked here because we're really out of time. I was hoping to do a deep dive into this one. Maybe I'll leave it for later in the week. But nonetheless, go check this out. The SEC filing lawsuits against startups and their leadership teams over this stuff is absolutely insane. That's it for our show this morning. I'll be back tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern, live with all the latest and greatest. Thank you all for all of that. By the way, Ernesto, what about Passkey with Apple? I trust it, but I still would rather prefer my password manager. Anyone, which one I use OnePass. I've used LastPass before, then LastPass went through multiple data breaches. The first time I stuck with them, that's on the record. I said, I'm not leaving them. I think they're going to be more secure. Then they went through another data breach and I said, thank you, LastPass. I appreciate you. And moved to OnePass. And I'm pretty happy. So we'll say that. That's it for the end of the show, y'all. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great rest of your day. And most importantly, y'all, stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.